The Senate is in quorum call.
I request that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection, Honor.
Mr. President, once again, let's be honest. Let us face up to reality, and let us acknowledge that most Americans understand that our great nation, once the envy of the entire world, is now in the midst of a deep decline. And for the sake of our children and future generations, we must end that decline and turn this country around in very fundamental ways. Mr. President, not so many years ago, the United States of America was admired, respected by people throughout the world for our generosity, for our concern for the poor of the world, for our democracy, for our Constitution, for our rule of law, for our way of life. We were admired, respected. People around the world said, you know what, we would like our country to be like the United States of America. Tragically, Mr. President, that is no longer the case. I was just on the phone this afternoon with an elected official in Europe who literally could not believe what is happening to our country today, and I fear that millions of people throughout the world, in every continent of this world, in every country in this world, are looking at the United States of America and say, what in God's name is happening to that great country? But it's not only our standing in the world and our increased isolation from other countries that I worry about. Mr. President, we used to have the highest standard of living of any country on earth. That was it, America. Strongest middle class in the world. We used to be a country where the American dream said that our young people will do better than their parents. My dad came to this country at the age of 17, having dropped out of school at the age of 14 from Poland, with the dream that his sons would do better than they did. My mom graduated high school with the dream that maybe her sons would have a college education. That was the dream of millions of people. We work hard so that our kids would do better. The reality today, according to a number of studies, is that everything equal, unless we turn around, our younger generation will have a lower standard of living than their parents. They will own their own home at a much older age than their parents. And when we talk about America being in a state of decline and the need to bring about fundamental transformation of this country, understand that 2/3 of the American people, according to a New York Times poll the other day, 2/3 of the American people now believe that a middle-class lifestyle is out of reach. We used to be a country of the middle class, and now 2/3 of the American people say no. The American middle-class lifestyle is out of my reach. Mr. President, we used to be the best educated country on earth, best public school systems on earth. Not the case anymore. We used to have the best health care system of any country on earth. Not anymore. We used to provide good, affordable housing for our people. Not anymore. We used to have the most advanced transportation system in the world. Not anymore. Just take a look about how the city of Washington dealing with the current snowstorm. In many respects, our great nation is falling further and further behind other countries, and we must not allow that to continue. Mr. President, the United States, our people, have faced horrific crises in the past, going back to the very beginning, the origins of this country, when a small number of people dared to have the dream and the courage to take on King George III and the British Empire and the most powerful military in the world, because they wanted their independence and they wanted their freedom. That was a crisis, and they prevailed. In the 1840s, there were people who were saying slavery is an abomination. It is immoral. We can't talk about a Declaration of Independence that says all men are created equal and enslave millions of people. We've got to end slavery. And they struggled and they struggled, the abolitionists. And there was a horrible civil war where so many people died. Finally, we ended the abomination of slavery, and the struggle continued to Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement and the end of segregation. This country went through the Great Depression. 25% of our people were unemployed. And government had to redefine itself, and we did that. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, December of 1941, we were not prepared to fight a war in the East or a war against Hitler in Europe. And yet within a few years, because the country came together, instead of building cars, we built tanks and we built fighter planes, we ended up winning that war. Won a war on two fronts. Bottom line, in all of these crises and others, the nation came together and prevailed. We did it then, and I have little doubt, if we do not allow people to divide us up by where we were born or the color of our skin, we can once again overcome the crisis that we are in right now, which in my view is the most serious crisis in the modern history of our country. And let me just say a few words about what is happening in Minneapolis right now as I speak. Let me be very clear. America is not about and must never be about a domestic military force called ICE, which, as we speak at this moment, is occupying a military occupation of one of our great American cities, Minneapolis, and is terrorizing the occupants in that city. America is not and must never be about federal agents shooting American citizens down in cold blood, breaking down doors to arrest people, or sending 5-year-olds to detention centers, all in clear violation of our Constitution. That is what takes place in dictatorships, in authoritarian societies, where there is not a rule of law. It does not and it must not be allowed to take place in the United States or any democracy on earth. So let me be very clear. ICE must get out of Minnesota now. ICE must get out of Maine now. ICE must stop terrorizing the American people. Not another penny should be given to ICE or Customs and Border Patrol unless there are fundamental reforms in how those agencies function and until there is new leadership at the Department of Homeland Security and among those who run our immigration policy. To be clear, Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller must go. But Trump's movement toward authoritarianism is not just about the use of his domestic army against the American people. It is about his attack against Venezuela in direct violation of the Constitution and international law, where he not only lacked congressional authorization, but where no one in Congress had any knowledge about what was taking place. Trump's authoritarianism is about disrupting the 100-plus year alliances we have had with our allies in Europe, and insanely threatening to seize Greenland from our longtime ally, Denmark. Does anyone in their right mind believe that the United States of America should threaten violence against our longtime allies? Trump's authoritarianism is about attacking Europe every day, one attack or another, because it is a continent of democratic countries, all very different, but they are democratic countries which actually elect their leaders. And apparently, increasingly, Europe and these countries will not simply do Trump's bidding, will now come to him with all kinds of gifts, while at the same time, as he attacks Europe every day, demeans Europe, insults Europe, he is busy cozying up to his autocratic friends in Saudi Arabia, who have helped line his pockets with billions of dollars from cryptocurrency and real estate deals. Not a problem that the head of Saudi Arabia is a murderer who our intelligence agency believed was responsible for the death of Washington Post correspondent Jamal Khashoggi. He is our ally. He's got a lot of money, trillionaire family, wealthiest family on earth, could do Trump family a lot of good. Not a problem that one of our allies is Benjamin Netanyahu, who has engaged in atrocities against the people of Gaza and is now under indictment by the International Criminal Court as a war criminal. Good ally. Those are the kind of guys we want, war criminals, trillionaires who put dissenters in jail. Saudi Arabia, a dictatorship. Trump's authoritarianism is about his repeated threats to make Canada, I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border, Canada one of our closest and most dependable allies, the 51st state. I mean, just think for a minute. Our allies for decades and decades, close friends, and you go around insulting this country and say you're going to become our 51st state. What world does Trump live in? How does his mind tell him to do that? Let's be clear. The American people want us to ally ourselves with democracies around the world, not dictatorships, not authoritarian societies. They do not want to be allied with or put American lives on the line for dictatorships like those that exist in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, or least of all, Putin's Russia. Mr. President, everyone in this chamber, including my Republican colleagues, understands that when Trump usurps the power of Congress, when he attacks the courts, when he threatens and intimidates the media and universities, and perhaps most significantly, when he brings criminal charges against his political opponents, be they liberal Democrats or conservative Republicans, that this man is a danger to everything this country stands for. My Republican colleagues know this, and the time is long overdue for them to begin speaking out against Trump's dangerous movement toward authoritarianism. We can disagree on the issues. We do disagree on the issues. But we should and must agree that this country not move toward an authoritarian society with more and more power in the hands of the President of the United States. And in that regard, let me applaud Chris Madell, who was a leading Republican candidate for governor in Minnesota, and who recently ended his campaign because he could not defend the National Republican Party in the face of what was happening in his own state of Minnesota. when Mr. Madel said, and I quote, "United States citizens, particularly those of color, live in fear. United States citizens are carrying papers to prove their citizenship. That's wrong. Driving while Hispanic is not a crime. Neither is driving while Asian," end of quote. Mr. Madel is right, and more Republicans need to speak out if they care about protecting the values this nation was founded upon. And when we talk about authoritarianism, we must also talk about the big lie, the lies that are told over and over again. Black is white, white is black. The constant barrage of lies that come from the White House. We can disagree on the issues, but you cannot have a democracy when the President of the United States lies profoundly every single day. No, Mr. President, Renee Good was not a domestic terrorist. She was the mother of 3 sitting in her car when she was shot. No, Alexander Petty was not a would-be assassin, as Trump's administration has suggested. No, last night's attack on Representative Ilhan Omar while she was conducting a town hall meeting was not staged. Somebody attacked her, threatened her. No, the January 6th insurrectionists were not conducting peaceful demonstrations. They were attempting to overthrow the results of an election. No, the 2020 election was not stolen from Donald Trump. He lost that election by over 7 million votes. And yet today, as we speak, right now, Trump's FBI has raided an election office in Georgia to seize their ballots. And this is, by the way, after the Attorney General of the United States demanded that Minnesota hand over its voter rolls as a pretext for ICE stopping its assault on that state. Mr. President, President Trump's unacceptable actions are raising the question in the hearts of millions of Americans of whether or not there will be free and fair elections in 2026 and 2028. But, Mr. President, it's not just Trump's authoritarianism that concerns me and millions of Americans very deeply. I worry very much about the growing economic and political power of the oligarchs in this country, the multi-billionaires who are side by side with Trump, who are front row when he got inaugurated. I think all of us will remember Mr. Musk there, Mr. Zuckerberg, Mr. Bezos, some 14 other billionaires sitting there when he was inaugurated. Today, in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of our nation. Unbelievably, Elon Musk, the wealthiest man alive, now owns more wealth than the bottom 53% of American households. One man now owns more wealth, some 700 billion plus, more wealth than the bottom 53% of American households. Top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 93%. CEOs of large profitable corporations now earn 350 times what their average worker makes. Meanwhile, in America today, while the very rich become obscenely richer, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, unable to afford the skyrocketing cost of housing, health care, education, child care, groceries, electricity, or other basic necessities. Very rich becoming phenomenally richer, tens of millions of Americans struggling to pay for their basic needs. And let us understand, Mr. President, that the oligarchs, the multi-billionaires, do not simply put their money under their mattresses. Not only do they want to own and control our economy, they are determined to own and control our corrupt political system as well. As we all know, Mr. Musk spent at least $290 million to elect Trump. You think you're living in a democracy when one guy could spend $290 million to elect his buddy to be president? The 100 richest people in our country spent $2.6 billion on the 2024 election. 100 people. Yeah, you, average American, you get the right to vote. But billionaires can spend hundreds of millions of dollars in super PACs that defeat the candidates who stand up for the working class and elect those people who stand with the oligarchs. And that number, the amount of money being spent in these super PACs by the oligarchs is growing and growing every day. And I should point out that it is not just the Republican Party, it is Democratic billionaires as well. This is a bipartisan effort on the part of the billionaire class. Mr. President, just recently, a super PAC representing the crypto industry just announced that it has $193 million in cash at its disposal for the 2026 election. In other words, you got concerns about crypto? Well, you're going to have to face a barrage of 30-second ads from extraordinarily wealthy people. Big tech oligarchs in Silicon Valley have already pledged to spend at least $200 million on a super PAC sympathetic to the AI, artificial intelligence industry, an industry that threatens to displace tens of millions of American workers. You worried about AI? You worried about robotics? You worried about the fact that tens of millions of jobs are going to be lost during the next decade? You're concerned about it? You want to have some regulations? Well, guess what? These guys got hundreds of millions of dollars to spend in a campaign against you. Now, that may sound like democracy to somebody. It does not sound like democracy to me. It sounds like a very corrupt system owned by the very wealthiest people in the world. And that is why, if we're going to come out of our decline, we're going to turn this country around, probably there is nothing more important that we can do than end the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, abolish super PACs, and move to the public funding of elections. Somebody wants to run against me, they disagree with my ideas, fine, go for it. But we should not have a system where candidates are backed by billionaires who can outspend heavily those candidates who are standing up for working people. That is not democracy, that is oligarchy. In a democracy, elections must be about one person, one vote, not billionaires buying politicians. But, Mr. President, that's not all. When we look at what is going on in America, and it's important that we do that, take a look at our broken health care system. We are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the people of any other nation, and yet we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all. We got 85 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured, and over 60,000 people die each year because they can't afford to see a doctor on time. You want to turn around America? You want to end our decline? We're the richest country on earth. We spend more on health care per person than any other country. Let us have the best health care system in the world, guaranteeing health care to every man, woman, and child. That's what we should be doing. And that is why we should pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. And when we talk about America being in decline, we're talking about the skyrocketing price of housing and the fact that tens of millions of Americans cannot afford to buy a home. We're seeing young people right now living with their parents because they can't even afford an apartment of their own, married couples who will buy their own home at a much older age than their parents. Today, we have 800,000 Americans who are homeless, 800,000, including people a few blocks from the United States Capitol, and 20 million households are now spending over half of their limited incomes on housing. Let us reverse this decline. Instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, let's build the low-income and affordable housing this country desperately needs. In the wealthiest country on earth, it is not a radical proposition to say that every American should be able to live in decent, affordable housing. When we talk about America being in decline, we're talking about the crisis in our education system. Several decades ago, the United States was the best educated country on earth. The United States used to lead the world in the percentage of adults with a college degree. We were number one. Today, we are in 11th place, behind countries like Japan, South Korea, Australia, the UK, and Canada. Today, the United States ranks 28th out of 37 developed countries in math, 12th in science, and 6th in reading. This is the United States of America, the richest country on earth. Our kids should be leading the world in science, in reading, in math, not being in 28th place. And if we're going to come out of our decline and successfully compete in a global economy, we need the best educated workforce in the world, which means we need to revamp our educational system from childcare to graduate school. Believe it or not, people don't know this, 70 years ago, major public universities, City of New York, California, great universities, were tuition-free. Maybe instead of spending $1 trillion a year on the military, we make sure that every kid in this country has the opportunity to get a higher education because we make our public colleges and universities tuition-free. In New York City, in New Mexico now, there are significant movements toward making childcare free and universal, and that is a lesson all of us have got to learn right here in the Congress. That should be our goal. Mr. President, when we talk about America being in decline, we're talking about the fact that we have a retirement crisis in our country today. In America, right now, over 20% of seniors are trying to survive on an income of less than $15,000 a year. Got it? 20% of seniors are trying to survive on $15,000 or less. One guy is worth over $700 billion. Half of seniors are trying to get by on less than $30,000 a year. These are the people who built this country. These are the people who raised us. We need to treat them with respect and dignity. And that is why we should expand and strengthen Social Security benefits and bring back defined benefit pension plans that guarantee a secure income in retirement. A great nation like the United States should not have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country. We should not have the highest rate, one of the highest rates of senior poverty of almost any major country. And when we talk about the decline in the standard of living in America, the fact that 60% of the people in our country today are struggling, as we speak, to put food on the table, we must understand that in our country right now, big tech oligarchs are working overtime to become even wealthier by throwing American workers out on the street and replacing them with robots or artificial intelligence. Nobody knows exactly what the impact of AI and robotics will be, but there are some very sophisticated studies which suggest that tens of millions of jobs will be replaced by AI and robotics, and we are in no way prepared for that. And that is why I have called for a moratorium on new AI data centers until we make sure that the economic gains of these revolutionary technologies benefit the working families of this country and not just a handful of multi-billionaires in Silicon Valley. AI and robotics are neither good nor bad. It depends on how they are utilized. If they can improve life for ordinary people, it is positive. If they can reduce the work week, it is positive. But if they simply throw millions of people out on the street, that is not a positive. Mr. President, in my view, we are living through one of the most difficult moments in the modern history of our country. But the truth is that throughout our nation's history, we have faced great challenges as well. This is not the first great and difficult challenge that we face. We have been through an American Revolution. We have been through a Civil War. We have been through a suffrage movement that demanded full citizenship and the right to vote for our women. We have been through the Great Depression when 25% of our people were unemployed. We have been through World War II. We've been through the Civil Rights Movement and the effort to end segregation. And here we are today. At every moment of crisis in the history of our country, the American people came together and chose democracy over authoritarianism, chose justice over greed, and chose solidarity over division. They understood in the past, and we understand today, that when we stand together, no matter how much money the oligarchs have, no matter how much political power they have, we have the people. And at the end of the day, people coming together is far more powerful than the billionaires and all of their money. So, Mr. President, if we summon that same courage today, if we stand together against fear and hatred, if we defend democracy and take on the power of the oligarchs, there is nothing that this great nation cannot accomplish. That is how we end the decline. That is how we renew our democracy, and that is how we build a future worthy of our children and generations yet to come. Mr. President, thank you, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, I rise today because of what's going on in Minneapolis. As we've all seen in real time with our own eyes, Alex Preddy, 37 years old,